If you are currently renting an apartment and you feel a deep, gnawing sense of guilt every time you write that check, stop beating yourself up. You have been brainwashed by the most dangerous lie in American finance. I'm Dan, and I spent 40 hours crunching the numbers to help you improve your personal finance and prove that renting is throwing money away is mathematically illiterate. We have all heard it. You go to Thanksgiving dinner, and your uncle asks, "Why are you still renting? You're just paying your landlord's mortgage. You are burning money." It sounds logical, right? When you rent, you get a place to sleep, but at the end of the month, you have zero equity. The money is gone. Poof. But here is what the realtors and the mortgage brokers conveniently forget to tell you. When you buy a house, you are also burning money. You're just burning it in a different fireplace. I want you to visualize a pile of cash on a table. On the left side, we have your rent check. You take a lighter, you light it on fire, and it turns to ash. That is unrecoverable cost. On the right side, we have a mortgage payment. You think this money is going into a piggy bank, but it's not. In the first few years, the vast majority of that payment is going to interest, property taxes, and insurance. You light that pile on fire, and it burns just as fast as the rent check. The bank takes the ash, the government takes the ash. You keep nothing. In many cities in 2026, like Austin, Texas, or Seattle, Washington, the cost of burning money on a mortgage is actually higher than the cost of burning money on rent. According to a 2024 report by Bankrate, in 50 major U.S. metro areas, it is cheaper to rent than to buy. In some places, the premium to buy is over 50%. Source, Bankrate, Rent versus Buy Study, 2024. So, we need to reframe how you look at that monthly payment. When you sign a lease, the rent number is the maximum you will pay that month. If the dishwasher explodes, if the roof leaks, if the boiler dies, that is not your problem. You call the landlord, they fix it, and you pay $0. When you sign a mortgage, that monthly payment is the minimum you will pay. That number is just the cover charge to get into the club. The real costs happen inside. If you are blindly rushing to buy a house because you are terrified of missing out, you're about to walk into a financial buzzsaw. I have developed a specific formula, the 97 rule, that tells you exactly when to switch from renting to buying. But to understand it, we first have to look at the invisible trap hidden inside your mortgage payment. Most people treat a mortgage payment like a forced savings account. You think, I am paying myself instead of a landlord. But if you actually look at the math of a 30-year loan, you will realize that for the first decade, you are barely paying yourself anything. You are just making the bank rich. This is called the front-load trap, or in technical terms, amortization. I want you to imagine ordering a large pepperoni pizza for dinner. You pay full price, let's say $25. The delivery driver shows up, opens the box, eats 7 of the 8 slices right in front of your face, hands you the one greasy slice left, and says, "Enjoy your meal." You would be furious. You would call the police, but this is exactly what happens when you make your first mortgage payment. Let's use real numbers for 2026. Say you buy a median-priced home for $450,000. You put some money down and take out a $400,000 loan at a 7% interest rate. Your monthly principal and interest payment is roughly $2,606. You write that check and think, I just bought $2,660 worth of house. Wrong. Out of that $2,660 check, the bank takes about $2,030 for interest. That leaves roughly $330 that actually goes toward paying down the debt. $2,030 is burned, $330 is saved. That means in year one, 87% of your payment is pure profit for the bank. You are not an owner, you are a tenant of the bank. You are renting the money to buy the house. This is why the rent versus buy debate is so misleading. People compare their rent payment to the total mortgage payment, but they should be comparing their rent payment to the interest payment. If your rent is $2,000 and the interest on the loan is $12,100, you are actually losing more wealth by owning the home in the short term. But Dan, you say, eventually I pay off the interest and start paying principal. Yes, eventually, but the average American moves every 8 to 10 years. Source, National Association of Realtors, 2024. By the time you finally flip the math in your favor and start eating more pizza, you sell the house, move, and restart the clock on a new 30-year loan. You reset the trap. You go back to buying the bank's dinner. The bank designed this system perfectly. They get their profit up front while you take all the risk. And speaking of risk, even if you stay for 30 years and pay off every single penny of that loan, there is still one person who can kick you out of your paid-off house tomorrow. You are never truly the owner because of the forever tenant. There is an uncomfortable truth about real estate in America that nobody likes to talk about at housewarming parties. You never actually own your home. You are just renting it from the government. Don't believe me? Imagine you pay off your mortgage completely. You owe the bank $0. You have the deed in your hand. You are debt-free. Now, stop paying your property taxes. Within 3 to 5 years, the county sheriff will show up, seize your paid-off house, and auction it on the courthouse steps to pay your tax bill. The government is the ultimate landlord. Your property tax bill is just rent that never ends. And unlike a lease, you can never move out to escape it. We need to add these costs to our burn pile. When we compare renting versus buying, we have to look at the unrecoverable cost matrix. Rent is 100% unrecoverable, but homeownership has 3 massive unrecoverable costs that also get incinerated every month. Interest, which we covered, property taxes, homeowners insurance. In 2026, these costs are exploding. Look at Florida or California. According to a 224 report by Redfin, nearly 1/3 of Florida homeowners have been forced to pay higher insurance premiums or lose coverage entirely as major insurers pull out of the state. In some zip codes, insurance alone costs $600 a month. Source, Redfin, Housing Market Update 2024. That is $600 a month plus another $500 for taxes. That does not build equity. It does not go into your pocket. It vanishes. If your rent is $2,000 and your taxes plus insurance plus interest on a house is $2,000, you are financially identical. The equity part is irrelevant if the unrecoverable costs match your rent. This destroys the ownership equals freedom narrative. You aren't buying freedom, you are buying a tax obligation. And at least with rent, you know the price. With taxes and insurance, the price can double overnight because a politician signed a bill or a hurricane hit the coast. But even taxes are somewhat predictable. You get a bill once a year. The real killer, the one that bankrupts young homeowners, is the cost that strikes randomly. Usually on a Sunday night, when you have no cash left. We call this the CapEx killer. You sign the papers, you move in, the boxes are unpacked. You are finally relaxing on your couch on a peaceful Sunday morning, enjoying the pride of homeownership. Hiss, drip, drip, drip. That sound? That is the sound of your bank account dying. Your water heater just exploded. Welcome to the CapEx killer. When you rent, a broken water heater is an inconvenience. You call the maintenance guy, he fixes it. You go about your day, total cost, $0. When you own, a broken water heater is a financial emergency, total cost, $2,500. Real estate agents love to quote the 1% rule. They say you should budget 1% of your home's value per year for maintenance. On a $400,000 house, that is $4,000 a year, or $330 a month. But in 2026, with inflation on materials and labor, that rule is dead. For most older homes, it is closer to 2% or 3%. But here is the real problem. Maintenance isn't a monthly bill. It is lumpy. You don't pay $330 a month. You pay $0 a month for 11 months. And then on a random Tuesday, your roof needs replacing. That is a $15,000 check you have to write today. If you don't have that cash sitting in a savings account, you have to put it on a credit card. Now you are paying 25% interest on a roof. You are drowning. And there is a hidden tax nobody puts on the spreadsheet, the weekend tax. Duh. When you rent, your weekends are for relaxing. When you own, your weekends belong to the house. You are mowing the lawn, you are cleaning the gutters, you are painting the fence. If your time is worth $50 an hour and you spend 4 hours every Saturday maintaining your property, that is an invisible cost of $800 a month in lost labor. You are effectively working a part-time job as a property manager, but you are the only employee and you don't get paid. But wait, it gets worse. While you are pouring money into new roofs and water heaters, you are missing out on the single greatest wealth-building tool in history. The money you trapped in your drywall could have been making you rich somewhere else. This is the silent killer known as the opportunity gap. Let's talk about the money that isn't leaving your bank account, the money that is stuck. When you buy a house, you have to put down a massive chunk of cash. On a $450,000 home, a 20% down payment is $90,000. Plus closing costs, you are looking at nearly $100,000 cash up front. That money is now locked up. It is sitting inside your drywall and your floorboards. It is safe, sure, but it is lazy. Your home equity pays you exactly $0 in cash flow. You cannot eat your home equity. You cannot use it to buy groceries. The only way to get that money back is to sell the house or take on more debt with a home equity loan. Now, imagine the opportunity gap. What if, instead of locking that $90,000 in a house, you invested it in the S&P 500? Historically, the stock market returns about 10 per year, 7% after inflation. If you put $90,000 into the market and didn't touch it for 30 years, it could grow to over $1.5 million. That is the opportunity cost of your down payment. By burying that money in a house, you are sacrificing potential millions in future wealth. Real estate usually keeps pace with inflation, about 3 to 4% growth. Stocks usually beat inflation. If your house goes up in value by 3% a year, but the stock market goes up by 10%, your house is technically making you poorer compared to what you could have had. This is the variable almost every rent versus buy calculator ignores. They pretend your down payment money would just sit under a mattress if you didn't buy a house. But you are smarter than that. You would invest it. So, when we calculate the true cost of buying, we have to charge the house for the lost returns of that down payment. So, we have interest, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and opportunity cost. It feels overwhelming. There are too many variables. That is why I spent 40 hours building a single, unified formula to cut through the noise. It all boils down to one number, 97. We have covered a lot of math: the interest trap, the forever tenant, the capex killer, and the opportunity gap. Your head is probably spinning. You just want to know, Dan, should I sign the lease or sign the mortgage? I spent 40 hours building a massive spreadsheet to account for every single one of these variables across 50 years of historical data. I ran the simulations so you don't have to, and it all boils down to a single formula I call the 97 rule. Here's the calculation. You need to compare apples to apples. Most people compare total monthly rent versus total monthly mortgage. That is wrong because the mortgage includes some equity, savings. You need to compare unrecoverable cost versus unrecoverable cost. Side A, rent. This is easy. It is just your monthly rent check. If it's $2,000, your unrecoverable cost is $2,000. Side B, buy. You have to add up the burn pile we just talked about. Monthly interest, monthly property taxes, divide your annual bill by 12, monthly insurance, monthly maintenance, estimate 0.25% of home value per month. Monthly opportunity cost, multiply your down payment by 6% and divide by 12. Fast motion visual of numbers being crunched furiously on a spreadsheet until they stop on a single number. Now, subtract side A from side B, cost to buy, minus cost to rent. If the number is negative, meaning buying burns less money, buy the house immediately. You are winning. But in 2026, the number is usually positive. Buying usually burns more cash than renting. The question is, how much more? The rule: if the gap is less than $97, you buy. If the gap is more than $97, you rent. Why $97? Why not zero? Because owning a home does have non-financial benefits. You can paint the walls black. You can adopt 3 dogs. You can't get evicted because the landlord's nephew wants the apartment. I call this the psychological premium. I value that feeling of control at roughly $100 a month. If it costs you an extra $50 a month to own that freedom, do it. That is a cheap price for happiness. But if it costs you an extra $500, $800, or $1,000 a month in unrecoverable money just to say, I own this, you are getting ripped off. You are overpaying for a feeling. Use the $97 rule as your hard boundary. It stops you from rationalizing a bad investment just because you have house fever. But even if the math says buy, there is one final, massive career risk that the spreadsheet cannot capture. It is the reason I still rent, even though I could afford to buy. It is called the mobility premium, and it might be worth millions over your lifetime. The math is important, but life is not a spreadsheet. Even if the $97 rule says you should buy, there is one final factor that overrides everything else for people under 35. It is the reason I personally choose to rent. It is called the mobility premium. I want you to visualize your career as a foot race. You are on the starting line, the gun goes off, the renter is wearing lightweight running shoes. They can pivot, sprint, and change directions instantly. The homeowner is trying to run the same race, but they have a heavy steel chain wrapped around their waist. At the end of that chain is a 2,000 square foot house made of bricks. When you buy a house, you are buying permanence. When you rent, you are buying patience. Here's the scenario. You are 26 years old. You buy a house in Ohio. 2 years later, you get a call. It's a recruiter from a tech company in Austin or a finance firm in New York. They want to double your salary. If you are a renter, you pay a lease break fee, pack your bags, and you are gone. You take the 100% pay raise. If you are a homeowner, you are stuck. You have to list the house. You have to pay a realtor 6% to sell it. If the market is down, you might be underwater. By the time you sell, that job offer might be gone. Data from the Federal Reserve shows that historically, homeowners are significantly less likely to move across state lines for work compared to renters. That lack of mobility can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime earnings because the biggest pay raises usually come from switching companies and changing cities. So, here is the final verdict. Stop looking at a primary residence as an investment. It is not an asset like a stock or a bond. It does not pay you. You pay it. A house is consumption. It is a lifestyle choice. It is a luxury product you live inside of. If you are ready to settle down, plant roots, and stay in one zip code for 10 plus years, and the $97 rule passes, then buy the house. Enjoy the backyard, paint the walls. But if you are young, hungry, and chasing growth, do not let an outdated version of the American dream become your financial nightmare. Renting is not failure. Renting is freedom. If this video saved you from making a six-figure mistake, smash the like button. It helps the algorithm find other people about to sign a bad mortgage. Subscribe if you want the truth about money, not just the sales pitch. And in the comments, tell me your result from the calculation. Rent or buy? I want to see the ratio. Hit that hype button so we can spread the word. Thanks for watching. Run the numbers, and I'll see you in the next one.